The Joseph Smith Papers Initiative continues to offer insight into the early days of the church through books and documents printed and released to the public. The latest release are the notes of the meetings held by the Council of 50, a group composed of early church leaders and a few non-members in the days of the church in 1800s Nauvoo, Illinois.
The Mormon Kingdom of God, which was formally announced in spring of 1845 by, ironically, Apostle Parley P. Pratt.
The Council of 50 was an organization formed by Joseph Smith just shortly before he was murdered. And its purpose was to help bring about the political kingdom of God on earth.
The Mormon Kingdom of God, which was formally announced in spring of 1845 by, ironically, Apostle Parley P. Pratt.
What? Oh, you're not having a brain seizure. Mr. Will Bagley, Mormon scholar, is correct. The Council of 50, Kingdom of God, was indeed announced and written by Parley P. Pratt in 1845, 1 year after Joseph Smith's death. Mr. Will Bagley, Mormon scholar, claims that Parley P. Pratt was the first person to announce the Kingdom of God after Joseph Smith's death, and here is the copy you can find on archive.org. Chapter 3, The Kingdom of God, page 65, and I've read through it, and you can find this on archive.org also, and it outlines the complete theocratic government of the Kingdom of God as proposed by Parley P. Pratt and his British oligarchs out of England, and Mr. Will Bagley well documents how these British oligarchs in England edited and wrote almost everything these Utah Mormons wrote, attended by British editors that edited all their speeches before it went into the Utah Deseret News, editing out all the swear words, all the colloquialisms, all the inaccurate grammar because they weren't well-spoken men. And then after these British writers got a hold of them that were in attendance in Utah, collect all these speeches, put them in volumes and memorialize them in the Deseret News. Then they were edited one more time, sent over to the British editors in London. Mr. Bagley continues to document the fact the Mormon archives have been purged at least 3 times that he is aware of. They purged and re-edited Mormon lectures given by these Brigham Young Utah Mormons at least 3 times through London. And then when he went into the archives, he was able to find some unedited documents, which the next time a Mormon scholar went in could not find because they had been purged again. And Mr. Will Bagley says that they have been purged at least 4 or 5 times, and none of these documents could withstand scrutiny by a court. But of course, they want to tell all the Mormon people what they tell them, which are, I hate to be so brazen, but are just lies. But you see, they think we humans are very, very uneducated and unintellectual and only think with our emotions. They never thought for once anybody would actually read the documents that they post online. Well, there's whole battalions of lay researchers, what are we called? Citizen researchers, that are going to pour through these documents, these treasure troves of lies, and pull out the actual history of what has been purged, but what we can discover through metadata, through documents that were saved, and I should say, probably by a lot of anonymous research assistants that nobody knows the names of now, probably scanned a lot of these documents that the Mormon Church thought they were purging and putting in flames. And that's just what Will Bagley states in his lecture, that many of these documents were burned.
Is to understand these founders of the faith in a better light, and I think in a way that can help us individually have more compassion upon other people, be more willing to show mercy instead of judgment.
Will you love that man or woman well enough to shed their blood? He knew hundreds of people who could have been saved if their lives had been taken and their blood spilled on the ground as a smoking incense to the Almighty, but who are now angels of the devil. If a man wanted salvation and it was, quote, necessary to spill his blood on the earth in order that he might be saved, spill it. That is the way to love mankind. He told the Council of 50 in March 1849, I want their cursed heads cut off that they may atone for their sins.
Is to understand these founders of the faith in a better light, and I think in a way that can help us individually have more compassion upon other people, be more willing to show mercy instead of judgment.
The kingdom of God has come, even that kingdom which will fill the whole earth and shall stand forever. The earth's rulers must take a lively interest with the saints of the Most High and the covenant people of the Lord, or you will become their inveterate enemy. This was the charter that justified for Brigham Young the application of any level of violence necessary, in his eyes, to further the interests of the kingdom of God.
Is to understand these founders of the faith in a better light, and I think in a way that can help us individually have more compassion upon other people, be more willing to show mercy instead of judgment.
You had violence that was sanctioned from the pulpit. And in Utah, you had a state of terror over these people. The religious authorities would get up and talk about murder, talk about cutting throats, talk about taking revenge. In the context of providing religious counsel. As Wallace Stegner said, to pretend that there were no holy murders in Utah and along the trails to California, that there was no saving of the souls of sinners by the shedding of their blood during the blood atonement revival of 1856, that there were no mysterious disappearances of apostates and offensive Gentiles, is simply bad history. Journal of Discourse, you can go look it up yourself. The most telling stuff comes out of the unpublished sermons, which I was astonished to be able to see, and I think that provides the political explanation for what Brigham Young was doing. But Juanita Brooks concluded blood atonement was a literal and terrible reality. Brigham Young advocated it and preached it without compromise. Now, this of course was part of the religious doctrine that the saints had a right to kill a sinner to save him when he commits those crimes that can only be atoned for by the shedding of blood, as Jedediah Grant of the First Presidency insisted. Grant advised sinners to ask Brigham Young to appoint a committee to attend to their case, and then let a place be selected, and let that committee shed their blood. We have those amongst us that are full of all manner of abominations, those who need to have their blood shed, for water will not do, and their sins are of too deep a dye.
What would you do with a brain if you had one?
Do? Why, if I had a brain, I could while away the hours, conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain. And my head I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain.